out there. It's Lisa Starr with StarrCast Podcast. We have a very exciting guest today because there's a lot going on in the world of beauty and making ourselves look and feel better that we all know about, and that is the continued blending of medical spa with spa and wellness. So we have seen for years that spas will have a doctor or a nurse come in and offer some procedures. Maybe it's on a shift or two, once a week. Some are more permanent. Some house doctors and nurses and whole staffs to do mostly non-surgical procedures. And the last year I have data for, 2021, there were over 8 million non-surgical procedures done in the United States alone. That's a lot, right? So the hesitation of many salons and spas and wellness centers about bringing in these kinds of services is the insurance part. Like, am I covered? Are they covered? What happens if things go south? Which they rarely do, but of course, that's the point of insurance. And so enter our guest today, Pat Tighe. Pat is an attorney by training, and he has launched a company. He's the co-founder called Coverwell by InjectSure. So welcome to the podcast, Pat.
Thank you, Lisa.
Pat will be joined by longtime industry veteran, Kim DeOrsey, who is the president of Business Development. But we're going to start first with Pat, although say hi, Kim.
Hi, how's everybody? I'm so glad to be here with you, Lisa.
Oh, we're happy to have you. This is a great topic and one that we haven't covered before. And I think it's relevant for anybody operating a business in this realm to know what their options are. Pat, you started the company. Why don't you tell us a little bit about when and why you had this idea? You were a practicing attorney. Like, when did you make this decision to become an entrepreneur?
Thank you, Lisa. As happens with many people, it kind of dropped in my lap. In 2012, way back when, my wife wanted to get some treatment at a medical spa, and she wanted to get permanent lipstick, so tattooing on her lips. And of course, she did her research and she found who she thought was the most competent person to do that. And she flew to New York. We live in Florida, to get this procedure done. And when she came back to Florida, she was surprised and disappointed that some of the tattooing was too deep. So she had darker spots in some of the areas on her lip.
So it wasn't even in color; it was variated.
Yes, exactly. And so obviously it was very upsetting. And so I said, well, why don't you just call the spa and see if you can go back up and see if they can help you fix it. So she called the spa and she left a message, and then she called again and left another message. And as we've learned, what happens when a complication or dissatisfaction happens with many med spas, they didn't call us back.
They never called you back?
No.
Wow.
So we decided, how can we get this fixed here in Florida? And we went to our co-founder of this company, Dan Kapp, who's a plastic surgeon. And Dan said, we can do some laser treatment to lighten the color. But unfortunately, it's so deep, there's nothing we can really do to totally rectify it, but we can make it better. And I said, well, how are you going to write this up so my insurance covers it? He said, well, insurance won't cover this. I said, what do you mean?
What do you mean?
He said, this is a known complication of this procedure. And your wife signed an informed consent waiving the ability to sue the spa if this happens, but also confirming that it's an elective procedure that she knew there was a risk of. So her health insurance won't cover her because it was elective. So I ended up paying out of pocket for the remedial measures for my wife. And luckily I had the ability to do that. But what Dan and I realized, it kind of was what dropped in our lap, was that there's a gap in coverage in the world. And people who aren't in the situation that I'm in might have to live with the complication that happened. They may not be able to rectify it. That was kind of where the idea came from.
So how long between when this occurred with your wife and when you decided to start this company?
Oh, it was pretty soon after. I have an insurance, family insurance. I worked for State Farm Insurance. So it's kind of a funny thing. When you're in insurance, you're kind of always looking at things as risk and how do you provide coverage for it. So we got to work on it pretty soon. Now, Dr. Kapp in his office had another product that protects people when they have complications from plastic surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like the higher end, anything with general anesthesia and above. But that company doesn't cover anything below anesthesia.
Mm-hmm.
So Dan and I looked around and saw that this doesn't even exist to purchase. And that's when we started putting our heads together about how could we form a company that would provide this service.
Mm-hmm.
And that was December of 2012 to answer.
So pretty quickly. What do you think is the reason that there was no coverage for this type of procedure prior to your creating the company?
Twofold. Back in 2012, there just weren't that many med spas. There wasn't as big a need as there is today, and as it's growing. But the other thing was it's a real niche market. When the complications happen, oftentimes the spas don't know about it, or they go unreported. And insurance is related to finance, and when you come to finance, everything's got to be black and white. These are the numbers. This is the risk. It's got to be a square peg in a square box, and that just wasn't possible with med spa complications.
Well, I know humans are unpredictable, right? I mean, a procedure that is perfect on one person isn't on the next, and it's hard to quantify that risk.
Exactly, and that was why it didn't exist.
And Lisa, to your point, we use a photo in all our marketing pieces. A friend of mine, we went in for a laser procedure. We both had the exact same service by the exact same person. And she had a disaster experience where she had to take a week off work. She had to see a dermatologist. She had to be put on steroids, and she had to see her therapist because her skin actually detached from her neck.
Oh.
And she had burns all the way from her forehead to her chest.
But you had none of that.
I had none of it.
Same day, same machine, same person.
Correct.
Yeah, well, that's a great illustration of the problem and therefore the risk of quantifying it that you spoke to. So how did you go about, no one's going to write insurance without that quantifiable risk, right? So how did you address that? I mean, you're an attorney, you have a background in insurance, you're the perfect guy to figure this out.
So what we did, myself and Dr. Cap, my partner, we did research inside our industries to figure out how many complications there are. And we got to a number that we were comfortable with, that is the actual number of complications that happen to spa treatments. And the target is from manicures and pedicures above to anesthesia and down. So pretty much anything that happens in a spa will cover that's not a manicure or pedicure, up to when you go under anesthesia. So between Dan's access to medical associations records and my access to legal records, we figured out the number.
So are you saying that you'll also cover a procedure like a microdermabrasion or a hydrofacial or, a deep tissue massage? I mean, are these things coverable as well?
All of those, yes. We actually would cover a tattoo parlor. For doing tattoos. We would cover like a Massage Envy or Massage Lux, where all they do is massages. We also will do the microdermabrasion. The risks on all of these are very low. That's why the med spas are really popular. They're really helpful treatments. They're really good. They help people to have better esteem, to feel better about themselves, get over stress and anxiety. And we want to support that and help that market grow. So we have broad coverage, and we don't even name the procedures that we cover in our policy.
And why not nails? I'm just curious.
Because nails, there's so many people doing nails, and it's very hard to quantify if they're licensed, if they're not licensed, what their training is, how they deal with their tools. It was just too great a risk. We couldn't figure out the frequency of complications.
That's a fair response. I mean, too many people doing it, holding sharp tools in their hands. We don't know if they're clean or not, et cetera. Nothing against nail stations across the country and the world, but there is a lower barrier to entry, and so a lot of people are operating places that may not have the same standards as others. Let's just say it that way. So that's fair enough. Okay. So you dream up this product and then you said, well, the problem is we don't know anything about the spa industry. And I guess that's where Kim comes in.
Yes, actually, interestingly enough, it was about a 9-year gap between 2012 and when we actually hired Kim. And it was really because initially we did get a lot of doors closed in our face about from big insurance companies to insurance product. And then we went about trying to open up our own insurance company. We figured out the rules and regulations and expense of that. So we finally found an insurance carrier that was comfortable with the risk, that was licensed in all 50 states, and we were ready to go. And then serendipitously, when we were ready to go, I met Kim on the lacrosse field.
Yes. And he's like, I see all these photos of you going to these spa events. What do you do? So I told him what I do. And then he tells me about this insurance and then Coverwell. I'm like, oh my God, where have you been the last 6 years? Because I've got turned down at several events and properties to bring in a medical director to have a Botox event, to do IV therapy because of the risk and the liability.
Well, that was serendipity, a meeting on the lacrosse field. I guess there were kids involved, or are you two playing lacrosse?
Pat plays lacrosse very well. I've never played lacrosse. And yes, there's 7 kids between our 2 families, and our boys play lacrosse together. And Pat actually was coach my son.
That's amazing. What a great coincidence. So tell us what the plan is now. I mean, how do you get the word out about what you're doing, and how, talk to us about what it costs. Like, how do you pay for it?
I think I'll let Kim answer that. That's really her wheelhouse.
Okay.
How are we getting the out there? We are working with the veterans in the industry, right? The Marriotts, AAG, Catherine Warren. So people that have been in operations like myself that know how hard it is to turn your spa into a med spa, that want to develop their menu and want to bring additional revenue share. So, good thing about Coverwell is it does not cost the establishment anything. So it and the client pays for it. So who's ever having the service is paying for it. And what we do is we do a split revenue share where the facility can also increase their revenue share in the bottom line.
So if I'm a client and I'm going to get an injection, let's say a Botox, then I can elect to pay extra, I'm imagining, to have this coverage.
Yes. So with the facility, it'll be anywhere from 4 to 8%, depending on what the facility chooses. So it's a very minimal cost.
And the client pays it, so there's no cost to the provider.
Correct. Just like a service charge, that 20% service charge that's automatically added, Coverwell is an additional percentage that's added
To the fee for the service.
Correct.
In addition to what the client paid for the insurance?
Right. It's $100. Say it's $100 for the injection. You're going to pay an 8% on that.
Okay. So the spa pays 8%. The client pays 4 to 8%.
No, the spa pays 0.
Okay. I just want to be clear about this. So the client pays the $108, the 100 plus the 8% coverage, and the spa pays nothing.
Correct.
Well, that seems
It's a
pretty low
win-win.
risk for the spa.
Yeah.
There's no catch. There's no other.
No, it's actually full of benefits for the customer and the spa, because what happens is the customer will get coverage for 30 days. So today's May 4th, they'd have coverage to June 4th, if that's 30 days, I'm assuming it is. And then if any complication arises from their spa services from today, we have $125,000 worth of benefits. Will help them to get immediate care to mitigate the damages from this complication. Now, what the spa gets is really as good, if not better, benefit than the customer, because when the customer now with Coverwell by InjectSure calls the spa and says they have a complication, the spa can say, "We're so glad you called. We're so unhappy this happened to you. Remember, you signed that informed consent. We always knew this was a risk, but you have Coverwell by InjectSure. You have insurance now. So why don't you go to a doctor, go to the emergency room? This
Mhm.
coverage is going to pay to get you better. Tell us what you're experiencing. And then they can embrace this client, be really empathetic to them at their time of need, rather than not calling them back
Mm.
and risking the client bad mouthing them on Yelp or Google reviews, but certainly losing that relationship when we know it's so expensive to acquire a new customer. And then with spas, you create this real personal relationship because of the nature of the services. And now we're enabling, because we're paying for the medical end of fixing these complications, for the spa to continue to treat that client the way they treated them when they acquired them. And I think that's the real benefit to the spa.
That's a tremendous benefit. I'm glad you highlighted it. I mean, from the attorney perspective, in the previous scenario, without the coverage, like what happened to your wife, calling the spa and not receiving a call back, is that what, as an attorney, you would instruct the spa to do? Like not respond, not engage? Is that just what is smart in the US?
Yes, that's the way you have to handle it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but it's the way our laws are in our litigious society that we live in.
Yeah,
So-
and we just talked to a client the other day that had a complication. She received a gift certificate from her sister to have injections, and she had a horrible complication. The spa was not very receptive to her, did not help. And this happened in November, and she still has complications to this
Mhm.
day. She doesn't want to get an attorney. She just wants to be nice. And what the spa did was they credited her sister $700.
Mhm.
Because the spa, that's what they usually do. Okay, we'll waive this, we'll give you
Right.
a credit. But nothing ever comes out of their own pocket. They're not going to
Mhm.
extend money out of their own pocket.
Right. And nothing is good for her. It
No.
went back to the sister, right?
Back to the sister, and med spas don't do that training of the resort luxury 5-star properties of how to treat.
Mhm.
And when you have a complication, there is no training on these complications in how to treat the person with a complication with that dignity and respect that they deserve.
Mm. I'm interested in what you said, Pat, about the 30 days. I mean, because we know that most of these procedures are temporary, first of all. And I would suppose that if you don't see any problem within them, there's not going to be a problem. And so did having it that way make it more affordable?
It did. It made it more affordable, and that helped us to make our numbers work in terms of putting a beginning and end on the coverage period. Because obviously the longer the coverage period, the more risk you have that a claim will happen. But what we discovered with Dr. Kapp and I doing the research about complications in the med spa industry is that the vast majority of complications show themselves within like 72 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And, we give a full month, because what happens, and it's very human, and I saw it with my wife with the tattooing. Initially, they think, well, it'll just go away. It'll lighten up on its own. Or they want to be in denial, because a spa service is a little bit of a guilty pleasure. A lot of people will siphon money off from other things that may be more of a priority to be able to afford to go to the spa. So then it's like shame on top of guilt when a complication happens. So they want to be in denial. They don't want to be, but they are in denial about what's happening. So it might take them 3 weeks to say, this isn't getting better on its own. Let me call the spa. So that's where we kind of thought of 30 days. We wanted to give enough time, a real true amount of time, where if a complication happens, they can call and still have their claim paid.
And
Great.
Lisa, I just sent you an email with comparisons between Allison and I. And you can see when she had the service done to 72 hours, how drastic the complication got.
That's too bad for her. I hope she's able to resolve it.
Yeah.
So, Pat, again, from a legal perspective, what kinds of procedures are not covered by your general liability policy? Like if you're a spa or salon or wellness center owner, what do you need to dig into to know that, oh, I need this extra coverage because this would not fall under general liability?
Right. So general liability insurance is really for slip and falls. If the business burns down, kind of those catastrophic events. But general liability won't even cover you for complication or malpractice or a negligent practice of performing the spa service. There, you'd have to have medical malpractice insurance.
Mhm.
And so you'd have general liability, medical malpractice insurance. And then the medical malpractice insurance, you're going to have to probably spend extra money on each injector or each person in your spa that's performing services and the medical director, the doctor. So that becomes very expensive. And what we've discovered is by having Coverwell by InjectSure in your facility, we're like the first line of defense. So if something happens, you can have them call us.
Mhm.
And then what happens with us is we kind of filter it. If it's a known complication, we pay to get it better. If it's not a known complication, if it's a dissatisfaction, we won't be able to provide coverage, but we might be able to send you to health insurance. And
Mm.
see if health insurance will cover it. And then if that doesn't happen, we can send you back to the spa. But that comes down to expectation versus result. And that's
Mhm.
not an insurable event.
Okay. I have a question for Kim. From the operations standpoint, you're in a spa, as you said, or even a luxury or a 4 or 5-star property, or even just a very nice day spa. I mean, does introducing this idea of insurance for what the person is about to receive sort of give it a different connotation to the visit that maybe isn't as desirable? I mean, how do we navigate this? So, come and it's great here, but we need you to sign this waiver first.
And that's a great question. And signing that waiver right there is admitting that there's going to be complications. So by having Coverwell, we are giving it that standard of care, because what we do is we verify that all your providers are licensed, that the facility is licensed. Because right now there's so many people out there that are getting into the space that aren't licensed. So this helps qualify it. This also we are making sure that they're doing training. As you know, training is an important aspect of spa success. So we're making sure we're doing that training, and we're verifying that this is an establishment that we back that is good to go to. And complications are going to happen, and the client is signing a waiver regarding complications. So we're going to back those complications and going to walk them hand in hand to a successful recovery if a complication occurs.
Well, it's quite common to have them sign a waiver for any number of things we do now, like the aforementioned microdermabrasion or hydrofacial, or perhaps a microneedling treatment or something that could be done in a spa. So I just think we have to be careful how we present it and navigate it to make sure we're not putting off people, from having these done in our facilities.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
it's excellent. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Pat.
It's an excellent observation. And it's one that it's because we don't exist. It's because this type of coverage never existed before that you kind of think, oh, why do we need insurance for this? There must be a greater risk because you're insuring it, right? But people go to Costco and they go to Nordstrom and they have great loyalty to those brands because they know if anything goes wrong with anything you buy from either one of those retail outlets, they're going to return. They're going to take it in. They're going to, take the return and give you either a better item or your money back. And that's where we want to elevate our spas to. We want the spa to say, we don't believe a complication is going to happen, but they can happen. And that's why we've always asked you to sign this waiver. But now this new insurance product's on the market and we're able to offer it to you because we do all the right things in our spa. We are like the Nordstrom of med spas. And that's kind of where we want to put the spa industry and put their thinking about our product, because our product isn't, you're going to get hurt and you need this. Our product is, you're signing the waiver already. You're being warned about a potential complication. And that complication is real. That's why you're signing the waiver and the informed consent. With that, we're going to give you coverage. So now if that happens, you have insurance coverage. Before you wouldn't have anything. You'd be out on a desert island by yourself.
Okay. So how does it work, Kim, the logistics of it? Like, does it happen at booking, at check-in? Like, where is this concept introduced to the guest?
It's happening in check-in when they're signing that waiver of consent. We also have a waiver for Coverwell, and we're introducing it that way. We are working with software companies to get it embedded into their software. We're working with Patient Now, and that has been a successful integration.
So I will check in to have my treatment. They'll give me the normal waivers, and then they'll say, oh, by the way, you have this insurance option.
Yes, and we do onboarding and we do training with the support staff at each spa location.
Mm-hmm.
And then they sign the waiver and it'll be a percentage that the spa agrees on.
And how is that percentage negotiated? Is it by the risk of the procedure, or are there other factors like location involved?
It's the 4% that to Coverwell, and it's negotiated on what the spa wants to do with regarding revenue share. So it can be anywhere they want, a 1%, 2%, 3%, 5%, and it's up to them.
Talk to me about the revenue share. What do you mean when you say that?
Let me take this, Kim,
Okay.
because it's a little bit of a misnomer, because we're really not allowed to call it a revenue share. We're really hiring the spa to be the first line of underwriting for us.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we want the spa to use best practices, to find out the history of the client, to find out if they've had any medical allergic reactions to the treatment they're getting, or let's say they're getting a laser hair removal. Were they in the sun in the last 72 hours? Did they take aspirin? Just the basic prior history that the best spas do anyway. As long as they do that, we're going to pay them whatever the percentage we take in above the 4% for that service, because we're an insurance product and we're highly regulated. We can't revenue share per se.
Mm-hmm.
We can hire them to do the best practices. And if they do the best practices, we're going to see less claims coming out of their spa. And then if we see one spa where there are a lot of claims, we can go in and audit them and review them. Well, what are you doing when the patient comes in? How are you verifying that they're suitable to have this treatment? And that's really what we're paying for. It sounds like, and it's easy to say, a revenue share, but legally we're really not permitted to call it that.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, the client opts to pay the $100 treatment plus the 7%. The 4% goes to the insurance company. The other 3% is how you make money, because you do have to make money too.
Oh, if you mean you mean the med spa. That's what we mean.
Mm-hmm.
Coverwell, we only need 4%.
Okay.
To satisfy the cost of insurance, the cost of us doing business, and to make a little profit. Anything above that, we send back to the spa, as long as they're doing that best practice in terms of the prior history when the patient comes in. We're trying to be as frictionless as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in the electronic medical record. When they do the intake, Sally Smith, here's my name and address, here's my date of birth, here's my phone number, here's my email. They sign the waiver, they sign the agreement to have the insurance. We get that electronically pushed to us. And then we electronically push the confirmation of policy to that customer's cell phone before they even have the treatment. And then when they check out, they give the money to the studio or the spa. And then the spa and Coverwell will even up at the end of the week or the end of the month, however we decide to do that.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, then a spa that operates well is going to be able to keep a little bit more of that over the 4% than a spa that doesn't. There will be less claims against them. Their premiums won't go up.
Correct. And what will probably happen if we have a spa that has a lot of problems, we're going to go in and ask, is there a pattern? Do you have one person that's doing all these treatments where the complications are coming from? Or do you have a lot of Botox, a specific section or lot that came in and it was tainted?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go in and investigate and find out what's happening before we make any adjustments to our relationship with the spa, because we believe that our vetting and our initial intake and enrollment of the spa will let us know the type of spa it is.
Mm-hmm.
So if one of those events happen, there's going to be some reason to quantify it, and it's not going to be the spa's fault.
Got it. So what has the risk been like so far? I mean, tell us a little bit about how many places you're in and like what kind of risks you've seen so far.
We are in
We are just went live with Patient Now, and they have over 3,000 spas across the country. So we just did that integration. That was an 8-month integration process. We are working with a couple other software companies now, and then we have local facilities that we're working with that have been successful. And it's nice to see that we have clients that are every month are buying the Coverwell. And not complaining. The support staff is explaining to it, and they're actually thankful, and they're coming every month and they're renewing their policies.
Yeah, there's been a lot of warm reception of this product. We haven't had much pushback. The pushback is kind of the conversation we're having here with you today, Lisa. It's, is this going to accentuate or focus the risks of spa services? Is this going to make people decide not to come to our spa because we're offering the insurance? And through a conversation like we're having with you, they get comfortable and they understand that we're not really doing anything differently. They're not doing anything differently except giving the customer this safety net. God forbid something should happen.
And you're getting that pushback more in the resort setting, but in the med spa settings with plastic surgeon, they have that InjectSure that Pat was already referring to. So they're used to that insurance.
Well, it makes perfect sense. Honestly, I mean, what gives people hesitation is the unknown result, right? How will I look? Is it good or bad? And maybe it won't be as good as we think we should look, which is the case most of the time. I think we always let our minds think we're going to look like so-and-so, and we just look like a little bit better version of ourselves. It's rare that something doesn't work. And as I mentioned before, these procedures are mostly temporary anyway. And it was always the thought that, well, if something goes wrong, by the time we get into court, there won't be any evidence, right? I mean, the results of a botched Botox or Restylane injection will probably be dissipated. So I think that having this option gives comfort to everyone, the spa and the client, that, the risk is as mitigated as we can make it.
Exactly. And that's how we want to have it looked at, because we're not so concerned with the litigation factor. We're really concerned with specific remedial measures, right when it happens, because I can tell you from firsthand experience, my wife was looking in the mirror 24 hours a day. It was like she didn't get any sleep. So catastrophically upsetting when one of these things happen. And then on top of it, you have to figure out, well, the spa's not going to call me back, and I have to figure out who to go to, and I have to figure out how to pay for it. When with Coverwell, the spa can say, oh, go see Dr. Cap. He knows how to fix this. This is a known complication. It's like winning the bad lottery. We're sorry it happened to you. But remember, you have this insurance, and it's going to pay to help you get better, and keep us in the loop. Let us know what's going on. And then the spa becomes a real advisor and friend to their client when they need it most.
Do you have a list of treatments that you cover? Like, are you looking into anything new, cryotherapy or cold baths or saunas or anything that's sort of wellness related?
Yes, we do have a list of services. We do have a chart, and those services that you mentioned, we do cover. Like Pat said earlier, the only thing that we don't cover is the manicure and pedicure. And I can send you the charts that we do cover.
Well, it's good to know. So what else should a spa or salon or wellness center know before they pick up the phone or go to your website? What are the things you're going to ask them?
We would just ask them to have all the stuff ready to be reviewed. The licenses of the employees they have, and local licenses that they need to have. But the spas that aren't doing things correctly aren't calling us. So, it's kind of like the people that would be interested in us have their ducks in a row already. And that's why they're willing to give this more elite coverage or a higher standard of care to their clients, because they already give them a very high standard.
Well said. I mean, it's an excellent option. And as Kim pointed out, it's much needed in our industry. I mean, it just helps everyone to feel better about what they're doing. You are able to work in all states in the U.S.?
Yes, all 50 states.
All right, great. Well, thank you again for inventing this, creating this. What a lucky person your wife is to have a husband who knew how to fix it and went on to create something that would help lots of other people too.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of guilt too when you go and spend money and then you do have a complication. There's guilt that, oh my God, maybe I shouldn't have done this.
Mm-hmm. Well, now we can all get injections and non-surgical procedures and not feel guilty at all.
And it might give someone the opportunity to get something that maybe they've been a little afraid of. Maybe they've been not willing to try it because they're worried about the complications.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have this safety net that they can do, try this procedure. And then God forbid something happens, know that at least their bills are going to be paid and they're going to be, be able to get treatment right away.
We've talked a lot about injections. Does it extend to laser treatments as well?
Oh yeah, laser treatments,
Mhm.
hot stone massage, deep
Mhm.
tissue massage,
IPL.
IPL, IV therapy.
What about cool sculpting, the famous one?
Cool sculpting is one of our larger risks, but we do cover it.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. Anything else you'd like to add, Kim?
No, you can check us out on our website, and we're also available to spas to do a complimentary consultation with them regarding their waivers and best practices.
That's a great procedure just in and of itself, to have you guys take a look and really help them make sure, as Pat said, their ducks are all in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you again to both of you for joining us. Best of luck as you grow this company, and as I'm sure you will.
Thank you.
for
It
the
was
time,
so
Lisa.
great to be on here. What an honor.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.